He thought he was humiliating her, but in the end, he was the one stripped bare, before everyone. Whitmore Regency, the luxury hotel reserved for the elite, was hosting the wedding of Millionaire CEO Nathan Carter. Today, he was marrying Brooke Anderson, the new darling of high society. No one expected a name from his past to appear on the guest list: Alyssa Monroe, the ex-wife he had coldly abandoned while she was pregnant. At exactly 7:15 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up. Alyssa stepped out, draped in a midnight blue gown. Behind her were two young boys in tuxedos, their eyes sharp as blades. The room fell silent. A glass dropped. The music stopped, and no words were needed, because with just one glance at those children's faces, everyone understood. She didn't come seeking forgiveness. She came to make sure he never forgets, and the very thing he tried to bury for the past 7 years had just walked down the aisle, straight toward his new bride. Subscribe to our channel so we can keep bringing you the rest of this story. And tell us, do you think this millionaire will still feel like the happiest man alive after what he just saw? 2 clear lines on the pregnancy test. Alyssa stood still for a few seconds, then burst into tears. Not out of fear, but relief. 2 years of treatments, hoping, praying, and now she could finally call herself a mother. She'd prepared dinner with care. His favorite, honey-glazed ribs, multigrain bread, a bottle of red already breathing. Candles flickered. The kitchen light was soft. On the table beside Nathan's crystal glass, she placed a tiny pair of white baby shoes. So small, soft as foam. They looked like a gift, and they were. She adjusted the napkin, took a deep breath. Her hands trembled, but her eyes gleamed with hope. She looked in the mirror, gently smoothed her hair, smiled at herself. Tonight, she would tell him about the baby, about the little dream they once began together. She never imagined. He would destroy it with a single sentence, and that's what happens next. The door opened. Leather shoes echoed on hardwood. Nathan stepped in, soaked from the rain. He didn't glance at the table, didn't ask a thing. Alyssa smiled, moving toward him. She reached out. He stepped back, his eyes like ice. "Pack your things. I want you gone by morning." Just one sentence. No explanation, no emotion, no chance to ask why. Alyssa stood frozen. No understanding, no denial, no tears. Her hand dropped. The pregnancy test slipped, hit the chair leg, landed face up on the floor. She looked at the table, still warm from the ribs, at the tiny baby shoes beside the untouched wine. What once was hope now looked like a cruel joke. Nathan walked straight into the bedroom. No glance back, no concern for her breaking. And in less than a minute, the woman dreaming of a family was turned into a stranger in her own home. Rain began to fall, light but cold. Alyssa walked out of the building in a thin coat, arms cradling her belly. She carried nothing but a canvas bag. Inside, a few worn clothes and a tear-stained pregnancy test. Her phone was silent. No missed calls, no messages, no one to call. Her mother had passed. Her father was just a memoryless void. Close friends had faded when Nathan rose. She walked for blocks. Mud caked her shoes. Hair clung to her forehead, her belly heavy. Legs trembling, but still moving. A small awning, beside a closed laundromat, became her shelter. She sat down, leaned against the wall. Didn't cry, didn't have the strength left. From a wife in a luxury apartment, to a woman with nowhere to go, no one waiting, only one life inside her, still holding on. And for that life, she had to keep going. The room at the end of the hallway had peeling walls and a warped wooden door. Inside, no bed, no mattress, just a thin, worn rug on cold concrete. Alyssa lay curled on her side, her belly showing. She folded a soft cloth, tripled it, placed it beneath her. One hand across her stomach, as if letting go would make the baby disappear. No lullabies. No one asking if she'd eaten. No hand reaching to feel the baby kick. Just the tick of a clock, and her heart racing. She closed her eyes, but her lids felt heavy. Each time a cramp hit, her hand clenched tighter. No light, no dreams, just a space to survive the night. And in the silence, Alyssa whispered, "Mommy's here. I won't leave you." In that darkness, motherhood began, not with promises, just presence. The elevator opened on the 14th floor. Alyssa pushed out a mop cart, each step slow. Her back ached, her belly heavy. Still 3 hours left in her shift. Tonight's building, a financial firm. Late meetings, suited staff, laptops open, coffee strong. She knelt quietly, wiping up spilled coffee near the elevator. Heels clicked behind her. A blonde woman walked by, scrolling her phone. She looked Alyssa up and down and said loudly, "Seriously? Another one?" Then to her colleague, smirking, "You people just keep breeding." Alyssa froze. Her hand gripped the mop. No response, no eye contact. Her cheeks burned, her spine chilled. She wasn't begging for pity, she was trying to hold on to dignity. In a world that saw her as trash. Pride and motherhood clashed in her chest. But Alyssa just swallowed hard, and kept wiping. She had to survive, for someone growing inside her. The 20th floor bathroom was silent, only a faint flicker of fluorescent light. Alyssa bent over the floor, breath shallow. Her back screamed. Then, a soft pop deep in her belly. She froze. Warm fluid ran down her legs. Her water had broken. Her heart pounded. She reached for her phone, dialed 911, voice trembling. "My water just broke. I'm on the 20th floor. Please." The operator responded. But when she opened the door, no one was there. No voices, no help. An employee walked past, glanced, frowned, kept walking, no questions, no concern. She was just a janitor, soaking wet, on a bathroom floor, going into labor. She cried, clutching her belly, biting her lip, breathing hard. No help, no care, the right to be human. Sometimes depends not on law, but on whether people see you as one. The ER doors slammed open. Alyssa was wheeled in on a ripped stretcher, her vision blurred with pain. Both hands on her belly, janitor uniform soaked with cleaning fluid. The nurse glanced at her insurance form, muttered to a colleague, "Another Medicaid case?" No comfort, no sympathy. Just the beep of a heart monitor and fluorescent light. Alyssa winced, clenching against the pain. She reached for someone's hand. No hand reached back. Less than 5 minutes later, a sharp breath. Then silence. No cry. One of the babies was born purple. Still, a nurse turned away, said quickly, "We've got one unresponsive." Alyssa panicked, tried to sit up. "My baby! Where's my baby? Is he okay?" No one answered. Her first moment of motherhood was also when she felt the smallest. Machines all around, harsh lights. They saw her as a number, not a woman, not a mother, just a statistic, from a cheap insurance plan. The postpartum room was dim. A draft slipped through a cracked window. The heater broken. The blanket too thin. Alyssa lay curled on her side, both newborns held close. All three wrapped in a worn, threadbare cover. One slept. One barely breathed, clinging to her finger. No flowers, no visitors, no congratulations. Just wind and heart monitor beeps. Alyssa whispered to no one but herself, "I have nothing, but I have you." She stroked her baby's heads, smiling through tears. Her first real smile. After days of barely surviving. No money, no husband, no home. But for the first time, she didn't feel alone. From that moment on, everything changed. Not because of some grand hope, but because love was finally enough to keep her alive. Night. An empty office. Alyssa pushed her supply cart down the long hallway, the neon lights flickering in rhythm. On her back, one of her sons slept quietly in a worn baby carrier. In front, the other boy dozed inside a laundry basket lined with a towel. She walked slowly, every step deliberate, afraid to wake them. Her legs ached, her shoulders throbbed, but her mop moved steadily. Left hand gripping the handle, right hand gently pulling the blanket back over the basket. No one had asked her to come in. No one forced her. But she knew. Skipping just one night would mean no formula tomorrow. A night staffer passed by, glanced her way, said nothing. Didn't ask. She didn't need them to. All she needed was for her babies to stay warm tonight, and for her job to still be there tomorrow. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like a mother mopping the floor at midnight, child on her back, eyes never straying far from the breath of the babies she bore through blood and heartbreak. The tiny kitchen was dimly lit by a dull yellow bulb. On the table, a single cracked loaf of stale bread. Alyssa cut it in half carefully, dividing it into 2 equal parts. She placed small pieces into each of her son's hands, her gaze soft and steady. She didn't touch any of it. She just poured herself a glass of water and set it down beside her. The boys sat next to their mother, eating as if each crumb was treasure. They didn't complain. They didn't ask for more. Alyssa smiled, a tired smile, but filled with hope. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. They had nothing, materially, but the love between them was immeasurable. That night, they didn't need much, just each other, and the will to survive. A mother's love had given her strength to keep walking even when her hands were empty. Steam rose from the cramped kitchen, filled with the scent of corn and grilled meat. Alyssa wrapped each tamale with care, her hands moving with the rhythm passed down from her mother. These weren't just meals, they were memories, love, hope. Each tamale was a promise wrapped in corn husk. She packed a few and knocked on a neighbor's door. An elderly woman opened it, eyebrows raised in surprise. "You made these? Smells amazing." She took a bite, then smiled warmly. "So good, sweetheart. My mom used to make these too." That simple praise brought an unexpected warmth to Alyssa's chest. After days of exhaustion, it felt like something had finally given back. It was a seed of hope, a new beginning, not built on money, but connection, tradition, endurance. She whispered to herself, "I can do this." And that would be the first step on a road full of hardship, but also light. A heavy rain poured down. Alyssa clutched a box of tamales as she navigated the wet, uneven pavement. Beside her, her son splashed along in worn sandals. "Mom, we're real workers, right?" he said with pride, voice clear as rain. Alyssa looked at him and nodded. A soft smile crossed her lips, even as her clothes clung to her skin, soaked and heavy. They reached the first customer, knocked. A woman opened the door, took the food, and smiled. "I love your food. Please come back." Those kind words fell like rain, soaking slowly into dry earth. It wasn't just a first sale, it was the first step, from nothing, toward hope. She knew the road ahead would be long, hard. But today, mother and son stood side by side, as real workers, and that was enough to keep them walking. A week later, Alyssa received an unexpected call. Her first customer had recommended her tamales to a close group of friends. One order became 5, then 10. She worked nonstop, losing track of time. One evening, while cleaning an office, her phone rang. "You can't work both jobs forever, Mom," her son said gently. Alyssa paused, sweat dripping, thoughts spinning. Finally, she made her decision. She quit her janitor job. That night, she sat at the table, watching her son sleep. Hope filled her chest. She knew this was only the beginning. But even beginnings are proof of something powerful. Simple food, simple love, simple belief. Building a future for the three of them, and she would never go back. Because the future was finally calling her name. Alyssa stepped into the bank, hands still smelling of masa and spices. She approached the business account desk, voice calm but firm. The banker looked her up and down. After a pause, the questions began. "Do you have a husband?" The words hit her like a punch. Alyssa hesitated, then answered, "No." A challenge, but also a truth she couldn't hide. The banker nodded slowly, turning to a colleague. "Without a cosigner, it's going to be difficult." No one helped. No one believed in the dream of a single mother. The bank doors didn't just close. They became a wall. It wasn't just about a denied account. It was a brutal reminder. In this world, a woman without a husband was often seen as a woman without worth. Her blood boiled, but she swallowed the rage. Because behind that rejection was the quiet, unstoppable power of a mother who would never give up. The bank echoed with the same cold sentence, "No husband on file. It's going to be very hard to open a business account." Alyssa looked the banker dead in the eye, voice clear, unshaken. "I don't need a man to sign for my dream." Silence settled over the room. It wasn't just a statement. It was the declaration of a single mother, a warrior refusing to bow. The banker stared, speechless. Alyssa walked out, her heart burning with resolve. No outdated rule could define her worth. Let me ask you, have you ever had to stand alone for something you believed in? Have you ever felt the fire of being denied and kept going anyway? Leave your thoughts below, because stories like Alyssa's deserve to be remembered. After several rejections, Alyssa took a different path. She returned to County General, the hospital where she'd given birth. There, she found Dr. Ramirez, the attending physician from that night. He looked at her cautiously, but with genuine kindness. "You need a space to cook?" he asked. Alyssa nodded. "Just something temporary. I want to build a future for my kids." After several discussions, she was granted access to a tiny employee kitchen, only open at night. It was small, outdated, but it was enough to turn her dream into something real. Every night, the scent of tamales drifted down the hospital halls. Dim light brushed across Alyssa's tired, determined face. No luxury, no spotlight, just a mother, and a dream that refused to die. And you. Have you ever found light in your darkest place? One day, Alyssa received a call from a major organization. They needed catering for an important event. She was overjoyed. This could be the turning point. She stayed up all night preparing. Each tamale wrapped with care, packed neatly. On delivery day, she arrived on time, heart full of hope. But when she met the event staff, their tone was cold. "We appreciate your food," they said, "but your event experience doesn't meet our standards. We need a more seasoned vendor." Alyssa said nothing, but her heart sank. Every sleepless night, every drop of sweat, dismissed in an instant. She realized then, great food wasn't enough. Success also required professionalism, trust, and support. It wasn't failure. It was her first expensive lesson, on a road that promised nothing and demanded everything. The rejection didn't stop Alyssa. She knew she had to learn. By day, she picked up extra shifts, always with her kids in tow. At night, she studied accounting on her old phone. Numbers, charts. She stayed up late scrolling design templates, taught herself branding, printed dozens of small flyers. She researched trademarks, walked miles to government offices, feet aching, determination unshaken. There were no mentors, no guiding hands, just the will of a mother fighting for her children's future, even tired, even alone. She never stopped, because success doesn't arrive, it's built. With every effort, every lost hour of sleep, every drop of sweat, and she was building it, step by step. That day, Alyssa prepared a large order for a major government event. The reception was hosted in a sleek conference hall filled with officials and high-ranking staff. She worked inside a mobile kitchen, wrapping tamales, listening to stories echo around her. Suddenly, a poised woman entered the prep area. It was Dr. Bryant, senior advisor to the mayor. She looked surprised, but warm. "Monroe's signature events? That's you?" Alyssa nodded, her heart skipping a beat. It was the first time her small business name was spoken aloud, in elite circles. Dr. Bryant smiled. "We've heard great things from past government functions. It's wonderful to finally meet you." That moment wasn't just recognition. It was a door opening to the future Alyssa once only dreamed of. The road ahead would still be hard, but she had just climbed one more rung. The TV flickered to life in the small living room. A local news segment was airing a feature on resilient female entrepreneurs. The host's voice rang out, and this is the story of Alyssa Monroe, founder of Monroe's Signature Events, a single mother who turned hardship into strength. Footage of Alyssa played, her hands carefully wrapping tamales, her warm smile as she spoke about her children and the journey that brought her here. Her son sat beside her, eyes lighting up as he saw her face on the screen. "That's my mommy!" he shouted, clapping with delight. Alyssa looked at him, her heart swelling with pride and emotion. She didn't have wealth, she didn't have help, but she had done something many said was impossible. It wasn't just her triumph, it was the victory of their little family. In that moment, all the pain, all the sleepless nights, all the rejections, suddenly felt worth it. And the story wasn't over yet. Alyssa stood at the gates of Haven Crest, a prestigious private school. In her hands, an admissions folder clutched tightly to her chest. Her heart pounded, filled with hope. She stepped into the office and greeted the staff politely. The woman behind the desk flipped through the paperwork, then said flatly, "Tuition is nearly $30,000 per child, Ms. Monroe. Are you prepared to cover that?" Alyssa's gaze dropped. The numbers on the page danced like a wall rising in front of her. She bit her lip, blinking back tears. "That's more than I can afford." Silence filled the room. Her boys stood beside her, looking up at their mother, sensing the tension but not understanding it all. The weight of motherhood pressed hard on Alyssa's shoulders. It wasn't just about money, it was about a dream for her children's future. And she knew, if they were ever to step into that world, she would have to fight harder than ever before. A letter from the school sat on the table. Alyssa picked it up, eyes blurring as she read the cold words. "We regret to inform you the scholarship application has been denied. A lump rose in her throat. She sat down, hands trembling, tears falling freely. Her boys stood nearby, not fully understanding the weight of the moment. Landon gently reached for her hand and whispered, "We're still amazing, Mommy." Jace nodded beside him, his eyes filled with trust. Alyssa looked up at them, heart torn in two. But even in that moment, motherhood stood taller than pain. It wasn't money that defined their worth, it was love, perseverance, unshakable belief. She pulled them into her arms and silently promised, "We'll get through this, no matter what." And in that promise, she knew, the road ahead was long, but they would never walk it alone. The phone rang deep into the night. Alyssa hesitated, then answered with a trembling voice, "Hello, Ms. Monroe, this is Haven Crest Admissions." The voice on the other end was calm, yet formal. "We were deeply impressed by Landon and Jace's records. We'd like to offer both of them partial scholarships for the upcoming year." She froze. The phone slipped slightly from her fingers. Her heart felt like it might burst. Shock, doubt, joy, all at once. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of pure, overwhelming relief. She sank into the chair, exhaling slowly, eyes lost in the ceiling, heart rekindled with light. Finally, a door had opened, and she knew, from this point forward, everything would begin to change. The tiny kitchen glowed with warm yellow light. On the table, plates of tamales were arranged with care. The smell of corn and spices filled the air. The three of them sat together, no worries hanging overhead for once. Landon and Jace laughed, their eyes sparkling with the joy of simple happiness. Alyssa smiled, watching them eat. That smile, worn but genuine, could erase every tear she'd shed. This wasn't a lavish feast. There were no decorations or guests, but there was love. And that was enough. In that moment, everything felt whole. Not because of money or status, but because peace had finally found them. A small hand rested on her shoulder, warm and gentle. "I love you, Mommy." Alyssa wrapped her arms around her sons, heart full of strength and hope. This was the beginning. A family. A future. A dream taking shape. Inside a luxury penthouse, soft golden light glinted off Nathan Carter's black tailored suit. He stood by the tall glass window, staring out over the glittering city. Brooke Anderson, his bride-to-be, adjusted her earrings. She smiled lightly, though doubt flickered in her eyes. A servant brought in the wedding invitations. Nathan picked one up and opened it slowly. "Mr. Nathan Carter and Ms. Brooke Anderson cordially invite—" The elegant text glowed on glossy paper. Nathan's smile turned cold, his eyes sharp. "Send one to her. Let her know exactly what I'm doing." Brooke looked up. "You really want her to come?" Nathan only nodded. In that moment, power and control were written across his face. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a move, a performance, designed to humiliate the woman who once left him. But what he didn't know was that she would show up with something he never saw coming. Nathan stood in a private meeting room with his closest team. He handed the wedding's invite to his event manager. His tone was clipped. "Send this to Alyssa Monroe. I want her at the wedding." The room fell quiet. Eyes exchanged glances. Nathan forced a smile, eyes calculating. "She needs to see what she gave up. She needs to know I made the right choice." It wasn't a real invitation. It was a challenge, a subtle insult. Nathan believed her presence would be the final blow, a reminder of what she lost and what he gained. But he didn't know. She wasn't coming to beg. She was coming to prove that silence and success speak louder than anything he could say. The plan had been set, but the outcome would surprise them all. A fancy envelope sat atop Alyssa's small desk. She opened it to find a wedding invitation, her name printed in glossy lettering. Inside, a handwritten message scratched hastily. "Hope you're not still cleaning." The insult cut cold and sharp. Alyssa stared at it, lips pressed tight. No tears, no anger. She understood the message clearly. This was Nathan's way of trying to belittle her one last time. But she wasn't the same woman anymore. She had built an entire life, from the pieces he'd thrown away. She smiled faintly, not broken, just more determined than ever. The fire inside her ignited. This story wasn't over, and the next chapter would leave everyone speechless. Alyssa held the invitation, her fingers trembling, ready to tear it apart. Pain surged inside her, the kind that builds over years of silence. But then a small voice broke through. "Mom, who's my dad?" Landon stood nearby, eyes wide, innocent, and curious. Such a simple question, yet it landed like a weight on her chest. She froze. This wasn't the first time she'd thought about it, but every time it was asked aloud, it felt like a storm inside her. She sat down, gently pulling him into her arms, a soft, sad smile on her face. "Your dad is someone who walked away from us, but I'm the one who stayed." His eyes sparkled. He didn't understand everything, but he trusted her completely. The invitation remained untouched on the table. She wouldn't tear it, because now she knew. She wasn't fighting just for herself. She was standing tall for the two little lives who needed her more than ever. Alyssa stood in front of the mirror, the wedding invitation still in her hand. In the quiet of that moment, she inhaled deeply. Her eyes held no fear, only clarity. She spoke softly to her reflection. "We'll go, not out of anger, not for revenge, but to show them. We are no longer who we used to be." Her son stood beside her, watching with calm trust. Together, they got ready. No words needed, just silence, resolve, and quiet strength. This wasn't a loud retaliation. It was a demonstration of grace, growth, and dignity. Have you ever chosen silence that made the world stop and stare? Share your story below. Because sometimes, the strongest response is simply showing up, whole, steady, and unshaken. Alyssa stepped into the small bridal boutique, her eyes focused and calm. She chose a midnight blue gown, not flashy, but powerful and refined. The tailor measured her with care. Alyssa stood still, mind already set on the night ahead. Soon after, she booked a luxury car, not for show, but to reflect the change she had become. At the tailor's, her sons were fitted for their own tuxedos. They stood tall, confident, unafraid. Every detail was precise. Every seam, every button, every stitch. Alyssa didn't need to say a word. Her presence and the care in each preparation spoke louder than any speech. She was crafting the image of a woman who had risen from the ruins. No shouting, no proving, just showing up and leaving a mark no one could erase. In the living room, Alyssa stood in front of the mirror with her two sons. She gently adjusted Landon's tuxedo collar and said softly, "Now remember, say, 'Hello, sir,' very politely, okay?" Landon nodded and repeated shyly, "Hello, sir." Jace watched his mother and tried to mimic her words. Alyssa smiled, her eyes glowing with tenderness. "You're my little princes, the princes of this family." The boys straightened up, standing taller than ever. They weren't just children. They were symbols of strength, proof that belief never dies. Alyssa gently placed her hand on each of their heads. "I'll always be the one to hold your crowns," she whispered. That moment wasn't just preparation for an important night. It was the planting of courage, dignity, and legacy in the next generation. Alyssa stood before the full-length mirror in the private dressing room. The warm, golden light reflected a woman of strength and unwavering confidence. She gently ran her fingers along the fabric of the midnight blue gown, her voice rising in the silence. "From ashes, I built an empire." It wasn't just a phrase, it was a declaration, a monument built from tears, scars, and sleepless nights. Gone was the abandoned girl. Gone was the lonely, struggling mother. In her place stood a woman, resilient, radiant, undefeated. Her reflection held no fear, only pride, and a legacy built not from privilege, but from bare hands and an unbreakable heart. Inside the softly lit fitting room, Alyssa stood tall. The midnight blue gown clung to her figure, elegant, commanding. She looked in the mirror, breath steady, eyes deep. There was nervousness, but it was no match for the quiet certainty rising within her. The woman in the mirror was no longer the one who had once broken. She was a symbol of strength, a mother who rebuilt her life from nothing. Every second spent in that small room mattered. It wasn't just a gown fitting. It was a final breath before stepping onto a grander stage. Not as a guest, but as the one in control of her story. Light danced on every fold of the dress like armor made from silk. This wasn't just a dress, it was her battlesuit, a symbol of the empire she forged from dust. Alyssa smiled gently and took a deep breath, ready to walk into the light. Alyssa took Landon's hand in hers, her voice soft, full of love but steady with purpose. "Always be polite and confident tonight, okay? I want people to see you not just as my son, but as someone who stands tall and speaks with grace." Landon's eyes lit up as he nodded, absorbing her strength. He straightened up, taking the moment seriously. Alyssa turned to Jace, brushing his hair gently. "And you, stay calm and strong. I know you both can do this." The three of them stood together beneath the warm dressing room light. It wasn't just about dressing for an event. It was about anchoring their bond, rooting identity and pride into each other. No matter how the night unfolded, Alyssa believed this. As long as they stood together, they would be unstoppable. Holding their tiny hands, she felt their strength pulsing back into her. They were never alone, and never would be. The makeup artist ran her fingers gently through Alyssa's hair, studying her face. She leaned to her assistant and whispered, "Who is she? She looks like a queen." Alyssa heard it and smiled. No response, no explanation. Her silence only added to the mystery. This wasn't just beauty, it was power, the kind that came from surviving what others couldn't imagine. The lighting caught her cheekbones just right. She seemed to glow from within. The tragedies, the collapses, the broken nights, they no longer mattered. What stood here now was not a woman to be pitied, but a woman to be remembered. Not just a guest tonight, but the queen of her own life, ready to claim her space, her voice, her worth. The camera zoomed in on Alyssa's hand. A simple silver ring glinted on her fourth finger. It wasn't expensive, but it meant everything. It had once belonged to her mother, a symbol of strength, passed down through grit and quiet defiance. The midnight blue gown flowed with every step, its fine embroidery catching the light. Every stitch, every detail, a reflection of the empire Alyssa had sewn together, thread by thread. Small crystal earrings shimmered under soft lighting. It wasn't just the look, it was the story. A mother, an entrepreneur, a queen without a throne, yet more powerful than most. Every detail told a quiet, undefeated tale of pain endured, battles fought, and dignity reclaimed. No one saw just a woman in a gown. They saw a force, reborn and unshakable. The dressing room door opened slowly. Alyssa stepped out, holding each of her sons by the hand. They walked together, steady, deliberate. The guests paused their conversations. Heads turned, eyes followed. They saw her, not as the woman who was once left behind, but as a symbol of return, of quiet triumph. Landon and Jace walked like little kings, poised, proud. Their footsteps were like a heartbeat, steady, bold. The air shifted. Curiosity and wonder filled the room. Some watched with awe, some with doubt, but all could feel it. Something had changed. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Their presence said everything. This wasn't just a walk into a wedding, it was the opening act of a performance no one could ignore. The whispers grew louder in the luxurious hall. Guests leaned in, exchanging side glances and sharp words. "Is that Alyssa Monroe? The woman he left behind?" one muttered, disbelief dripping from her voice. "She actually showed up? With 2 kids?" A nearby group murmured, "She's changed. But does she really belong here?" The tension thickened. Stares sharpened. Some curious, some condescending, some outright hostile. Alyssa didn't hear the words, but she felt the eyes, cold as blades. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a battlefield of status, power, and social lines drawn in gold. Her presence was an unspoken protest, a declaration that the world they thought belonged to them had room for someone like her, and nothing, not the whispers, not the stares, could erase that. Alyssa paused at the grand entrance. She looked down at her sons, eyes full of pride, soaked in love. Landon and Jace nodded silently, standing tall beside her. They were no longer just children. They were survivors, warriors who had walked through fire with their mother. The 3 of them took a deep breath, preparing to step into a room that once would have swallowed them whole, but not anymore. This wasn't just Nathan's wedding, it was their arrival, their silent victory. Under the shimmering lights, they stood as one, a living testament to strength, unity, and grace. Every step they took whispered to the room, "You underestimated us, and we are still standing." Tonight, Alyssa and her sons didn't come to spectate. They came to be seen, bold, proud, undeniable. The sleek black car pulled up to the front of the Whitmore Regency. The door opened slowly, and Alyssa stepped out. Instantly, every eye in the crowd turned toward her. Guests fell silent. No one spoke. Camera flashes lit the air like a celebrity arrival. Her midnight blue gown trailed softly along the red carpet. Her two sons followed close behind, tuxedos crisp, their presence calm and composed. They didn't falter. Heads high, steps firm. Alyssa's arrival wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. A return in full power. No one could look away. She wasn't the woman once discarded. She was the woman who rose from ashes. A queen in full control of her story. The silence roared louder than words, as awe and reverence eclipsed gossip. This was Alyssa's moment, and no one could predict what would happen next. A quiet voice whispered through the crowd, "That's the Monroe woman?" She catered the mayor's ball. The words spread like wildfire. Guests turned to one another, shock and admiration flickering across their faces. They remembered the rumors. Of the woman who went from nothing to building a reputable brand, trusted by the city's top officials. This wasn't just a transformation of wealth or status, it was a redefinition of worth, proof of resilience and the power of motherhood. Lights glinted off her gown, highlighting her quiet pride. The murmurs were no longer dismissive, they were tinged with respect. Monroe was no longer whispered with contempt, it was spoken with reverence. She stood among them without saying a word. Her presence said everything. The two boys in the sleek black tuxedos approached the guests. Landon and Jace bowed politely, their voices clear and gentle. "Good evening, sir." "Good evening, ma'am." The guests were stunned. Doubt turned into admiration. It wasn't just their manners, it was their grace, their quiet strength. Someone leaned over and whispered, "They've clearly been raised with care." The room softened, becoming more still, more respectful. These boys weren't just children of hardship, they were proof of legacy. A new generation, carrying the strength and dignity of a mother who built everything from ruin. Their bows weren't just etiquette, they were silent declarations. "We're ready for this world, and we belong." Nathan stood frozen in the ballroom, his eyes locked on Alyssa, and the two boys beside her. Brooke, puzzled, leaned in. "Who is that?" He answered coldly, "My ex-wife." But his voice cracked beneath the words. There was no anger, no jealousy, just a quiet panic. A man suddenly realizing he'd thrown away something irreplaceable. In that stillness, Alyssa moved like a queen across the kingdom he no longer ruled. And Nathan? He stood there, alone in his silence, haunted by everything he once refused to see. Nathan's gaze dropped to the boys. Their faces, their eyes, so familiar, too familiar. It wasn't suspicion, it was recognition. Undeniable. His heart raced. Breath caught in his chest. They didn't know who he was, but he knew. They were his, and their presence was a quiet punch to the gut. No one said a word. But Nathan couldn't deny it anymore. He had left them, and now they were standing tall beside the woman he once cast aside, and that truth scared him more than anything ever had. Alyssa stopped, her eyes sharp, her posture regal. She looked straight ahead and smiled, a slow, poised smile. "Thank you for the invitation," she said, her voice soft but resolute. It wasn't gratitude, it was grace. It was power wrapped in poise. She didn't yell, she didn't confront. She didn't need to. That one sentence held the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. Nathan understood. Everyone did. "Tell us? What do you think of Alyssa's way of responding? Isn't dignity the sharpest form of revenge? Sometimes, the most powerful statement is becoming someone no one thought you could be." Alyssa moved through the crowd gracefully. She shook hands, exchanged warm greetings, smiling with quiet confidence. No one brought up the past. They didn't need to. All they saw now was a woman who had triumphed. Every handshake affirmed her place among them. She didn't brag, she didn't explain, and yet she was seen, respected, admired. In her calm gestures, in her laughter, they felt the power of someone who had earned her presence. Alyssa wasn't a guest. She was the moment. A mother, an entrepreneur, a queen, crowned not with wealth, but with resilience. A group of high-profile guests approached Alyssa, well-known names, influential figures. They smiled, and asked to take a photo with her. The cameras clicked, capturing every angle, every glance, every spark of recognition. Compliments followed. She did what no one thought possible. "The strongest woman I've ever seen." Alyssa didn't boast. She didn't need to. Her eyes held gratitude and quiet fire. She was no longer the woman they once dismissed. Now, she was someone they looked up to, someone who inspired. Her presence shifted the room. She had arrived, not because she forced her way in, but because she built her place, brick by brick, with love and pain and endless resolve. Some guests whispered about her past, failures, scars, but Alyssa just smiled. She said nothing, and that silence, stronger than any defense. She wasn't avoiding the past. She had outgrown it. Her eyes gleamed with certainty. They said, without words, "I am not defined by where I've been." People didn't see a woman hiding. They saw a woman who had conquered herself. No drama, no explanations, just power, composure, control. And suddenly, the room fell a little quieter. People wanted to know, how did she do it? How did she turn pain into power? But Alyssa knew. She didn't need to answer. Her presence was the answer. Alyssa stood at the center of the glowing ballroom. All eyes were on her. Not with judgment, but with reverence. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Her very presence was the message. The midnight blue gown shimmered, drawing light to every angle of her story. A journey of pain, strength, and triumph. She wasn't the woman they once pitied. She was the woman who had built her own empire, with nothing but her will and her love. Emotion filled the room. No applause, no theatrics, just silent recognition. Alyssa didn't come to boast. She came to stand, to show what survival looks like, what victory feels like. She wasn't a guest. She was the legacy, a symbol of silent strength and belief that never died. Brooke froze as her gaze landed on the two children. Landon stood tall, eyes sharp. Noah smiled gently, a dimple on his cheek identical to Nathan's as a boy. She turned to her fiancé and asked quietly, voice low, "They're yours, aren't they?" Nathan didn't answer. His face stiffened, eyes fixed on the three figures mingling among the city's elite. Brooke tightened her grip on her champagne glass. Not jealous, not angry, just shaken by a truth she hadn't been prepared to meet. Still, Nathan said nothing, but his silence said everything. The distance between them, once firm, now cracked at the seams, not because Alyssa had reappeared, but because the truth had always been buried. And sometimes, silence weighs heavier than confession. Alyssa bent down to straighten Noah's button. She gently brushed the hair from Landon's forehead. There was nothing left to prove. Every eye had seen. Every heart had felt it. She turned toward the wedding gates, the sunset casting gold across her gown like a rising sun. "Let's go." Her voice was soft. The boys followed. Calm, unrushed. Every step a quiet declaration. We came. We stood tall. And now, we leave with heads high. The guests murmured. A few rose. Scattered applause broke the hush. No one knew who started it. No one stopped her. No one looked away. Alyssa didn't glance back. She had seen what needed to be seen, heard what needed to be heard. And sometimes, the most powerful goodbye is the one left unsaid. The gate closed behind the three of them. No one rose to escort them. No one called them back. And yet, no one sat down. No gossip, no clinking glasses, only silence. Dozens of eyes still fixed on the door they'd just walked through. Alyssa was gone. But her presence lingered like a mark carved into the air. Her steps still echoed through the room, quiet but permanent. Nathan hadn't moved. Brooke pressed her lips, her gaze no longer certain. A few guests opened their mouths, unsure of what to say, and said nothing. No one fully grasped what had just happened. They only knew it wasn't just a wedding, it was a reckoning, a truth unspoken, yet impossible to ignore. And in the end, silence was the loudest sound in the room. Nathan re-entered the ballroom. The music played on, the glasses clinked. The chandeliers still glowed like nothing had happened, but the spotlight no longer belonged to him. Guests returned to their seats, but none turned back toward the groom. They whispered softly, but their eyes no longer held admiration, only curiosity and quiet regret. Nathan stood on the stage, alone. The spotlight now pointed to the empty space where Alyssa had stood. He raised his champagne. His hand trembled. No one toasted back. And, for the first time in his life, he wasn't the center of the story. He was a side character. In his own wedding. Behind him, the curtain swayed in the breeze, as if the light had chosen a different place to shine. Not him. Not anymore. In the car, streetlights streaked across the windows like memories running backward. The boys sat close together, clutching the hems of their tiny suits. Landon turned slightly, whispering, "Mom, are we okay?" Alyssa paused. She looked into her son's eyes, filled with concern but still glowing with hope. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head and pulled them close. "Not just okay," she whispered, her voice warm like spring. "You two are perfect." No mention of Nathan, no mention of the wedding. They didn't matter now, because this moment, the hum of the engine, the gentle laughter, this was theirs. Success isn't measured by the spotlight, but by this, after everything. She could still smile, and teach her children to walk forward, as if they were born to rise. The small room glowed with soft amber light from the bedside lamp. A photo frame hung on the wall. Their little family. No noise, no questions, only quiet, the kind that comes after years of storm. Alyssa lay between her sons, one resting on her left shoulder, the other's hand gently placed on her belly, a habit from toddler days. Their breathing even, soft like wind through an open curtain. She didn't close her eyes just yet. She stared at the ceiling, her chest empty, but finally, in a good way, like the release of a stone she'd carried for far too long. No more proving, no more wondering, am I enough? Just warmth, and a rare kind of peace, the kind she never thought would find her, lying between them. That was the only crown she ever needed, a quiet night, and a mother. Finally allowed to sleep in peace. In the stillness, Alyssa turned to face her sons. Her eyes glimmered in the low light. No more tears, no more fear. She gently squeezed the small hand in hers, warmth radiating from a bond not given, but earned through everything they'd survived together. She bent her head slightly, whispering words meant for no one but the three of them. They tried to break us, but look at us now. The words weren't angry, not boastful, just true. Outside, the city lights blinked like a heartbeat that never sleeps. But inside that room, the ones they once dismissed, forgotten, cast aside, now rested in quiet victory. No stage, no applause, just a single whispered sentence, enough to close a whole chapter and begin the final act, written by their own hands, with love. The ballroom still shone brightly. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting cold light on patterned floors. Nathan stood, alone. The music still played, but his glass was watered down. The ice had melted. People were everywhere, but no one really stayed. Brooke laughed with her friends. The guests' curiosity had shifted, not toward him, but toward the woman in the blue dress who walked out like a queen. Nathan looked around. The room hadn't changed, but where he stood felt colder than ever. No admiration, no praise, just light, harsh but unable to warm him. This wasn't a loss of money. It was the loss of something far rarer, a family, trust, a woman who once loved him, without conditions. And now, she had gone further than he ever imagined. She hadn't started this journey to prove anything, not for revenge, not to make anyone regret. Every step, every fall, every tear swallowed in silence, was to become herself, the truest, strongest version. She didn't need the spotlight. She didn't need the applause. She only needed these two children, sleeping soundly beside her. A woman once discarded, once ridiculed, now the anchor of two small worlds. She didn't need validation, because she had already carved her name into life, not to prove, but to exist. Radiant, resilient, unshakably hers. They said she'd never make it back, that a woman like her was meant to break, but they were wrong. She didn't return for revenge. She didn't need apologies. She didn't need to prove a thing. She just stood, and the room fell silent. A mother, a woman, a symbol. If you've ever suffered in silence, bit your tongue just to keep walking, chose grace over vengeance, then this story is yours. If you believe in quiet strength, share her story. Just one click. It could reach 1 million hearts. Are you ready?